The beginning of the collection of the Artillery Museum collection began in 1703 from the time of the founding of the northern capital. Interesting and rare tools began to be collected in the bastions of the Peter and Paul fortress, which marked the beginning of the collection. At that time, the collection was called the Zeichhaus. The foundation date of the museum is considered to be 1756. Since 1868, it has been located in the building of the former arsenal, where it is still located. It was called the Artillery Historical Museum until 1965. The museum is located at Street, Petersburg, Alexandrovsky Park, 7. The nearest metro station is Gorkovskaya. A great contribution to the preservation of invertor, curious and memorable things, was made by the head of the artillery department, Count Shuvalov. Since 1756, Lieutenant Meller became the head of the repository. The exposition of the Artillery Museum is located in 13 halls. Many of the exhibits are monuments of science, technology, and art. Here you can see the oldest examples of Russian artillery of the 14th to 16th centuries. Ustyazensk iron squeaks, bronze tools of the master Yakov of the end of the 15th century, as well as domestic rifled guns of the 16th to 17th centuries. On the ground floor, in a huge hall, Russian rocket technology is presented, from 18th century guns to atomic missiles. Small arms and cold steel are on display, including exhibits donated by the outstanding Russian designer Kalashnikov. Many of the values of the exhibition demonstrate the high level of scientific thought of Russian scientists. The proof of this is the fact that similar inventions were made abroad much later. Among the most valuable exhibits are the personal tools of the Russian emperors, Alexander I, Nicholas II, as well as foreign commanders and military leaders. The Revolution and the Civil War caused great damage to the museum. So, in July 1918, a rebellion broke out in Yaroslavl against the Soviet government under the leadership of Colonel Pecherov. The area of the Spasskaya Monastery, where the museum property was kept, became a battlefield. As a result, 55 boxes with banners and weapons were completely burned in the resulting fire, about 2,000 banners in total, including valuable Streltsy ones, all trophies collected during the First World War, 300 copies of antique firearms and bladed weapons. 54 valuable guns were damaged on the barges, the archive of the second half of the 18th century and partially of the first half of the 19th century were lost in the water. And then a terrible hurricane caused huge damage to the museum, which swept over Leningrad on the night of September 23 to 24, 1924 and caused a huge flood that flooded part of the Kronverk territory. And yet, the main task facing the Guardians of Eternity, in the time of troubles, to save what they had, was completed. The wealth was not only largely preserved, but also multiplied. A new generation of museum workers continued the work of their predecessors in the terrible years of the Great Patriotic War. In the incredibly difficult conditions of the siege of Leningrad, they managed to save the priceless relics of the museum for posterity, to minimize losses from bombing and shelling. Moreover, during the war, the museum's funds were actively replenished with Soviet and captured military equipment from the battlefields. And the AIM staff made truly heroic efforts to restore it in the post-war years. In 1963, the Artillery Historical Museum accepted the funds of the Central Historical Military Engineering Museum. Engineers came to the gunners with the richest funds that had been accumulated and processed for more than 150 years. The museum's exposition is located in 13 halls on an area of more than 17,000 square meters. Currently, the museum fund consists of 850,000 museum items. The main part of the museum's exposition is located in the open air. It is almost 2 hectares of area, on which 250 units of heavy equipment are exhibited. The principle is the same, chronology, and each exhibit is placed in such a way that the visitor has the opportunity to view it from at least 2 sides. Not only Russian weapons samples are presented in the courtyard, but also captured units that were inherited in bloody battles, starting with the Northern War. For 300 years of its existence, the Military Historical Museum of Artillery, Engineering Troops and Communications Troops has become one of the largest military historical museums in the world, the national pride of Russia, a genuine temple of the military history of the fatherland, a unit of eternity within the Russian armed forces, as it is sometimes rightly called. The doors of the museum are hospitably open to visitors, who will have an exciting meeting with the military history of Russia and other countries.